For those of you who just joined us, if you move your cursor around the gallery, you'll find the thing that says chat. If you click on that, you will be able to see the chat room, and down in the bottom right, if you could, write in your name and what Conservation Commission you're associated with. And that would be great. Some people have already done that. So we'll have that, so that way we have a record of who's here. And then I've got some conservation news from the Newmarket Conservation Commission. They're working with the town's Arts and Tourism Committee to have their second annual photo event open to the public in late autumn. Photos should be taken from any Newmarket conservation property of any scene the artist wants to capture and enter it in the event. Last year they had 24 and they're hoping to have more this year. They also have guests come to their meetings for a 15 to 20-minute presentation at all their commission meetings. Last month they had the Rockingham County Forester Greg Jordan there. And this month's guest would be Malin Clyde of UNH's Nature Groupies. That's the group that lines up all the volunteers. I found that people do volunteer vacations. They will travel to other towns or places like 3 hours away or for the weekend just to volunteer on somebody's project. So it's a great organization to get tapped into so that you can, so I highly recommend them if you're a town that's looking for volunteers. And then Emma Tooten will be there, who is the Land Conservation Field Specialist from the UNH Extension Resources Office. So that's the news I have. I also got an email from a news item from the National Association of Conservation Districts in Mecklenburg County in North Carolina, in Charlottetown. They have a group that's interested in maintaining the canopy of their trees. They have 49% of their town covered in trees, and they're trying to increase that because they have a lot of impervious pavement going down, and they want to keep their tree canopy where it is to slow down flooding and heating of the pavement and keep the town cool. Now, I live in Chester. I don't see that as something my conservation commission would do, but somebody like Portsmouth or Salem might be of interest to them to do some kind of project like that. So I thought I'd share with you that. I don't know if we have anybody from those commissions. Deb Munson, you're from Chester? Can you wave?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Deb, okay. Yeah, we're both from Chester. Very good.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to unmute. I was looking for my mute button there.
Okay. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Vicki to talk about our project that we've done on invasive species at Odeon Point State Park.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. Share in the beginning. Okay, so I have about 5 minutes to cover a very big project. So it'll be a little brief, but there's a couple of things we really want to highlight. So the Conservation District has been working on habitat restoration at Odeon Point State Park for over 10 years, and we've created a lot of partnerships. So we're really excited about this work, and here's one of the reasons why. We have a lot of important communities there: beach grass, grasslands, coastal salt pond marsh, Tidal Creek bottom. A lot of really important communities there, and including coastal wetlands, freshwater wetlands, a variety of rare, threatened, and endangered species, 2 critically imperiled habitat, and 5 rare or uncommon habitats. So this is a really important place as far as conservation goes. And it has a really cool history too. So starting in 1623, it was the first New Hampshire settlement. And then all the way down to World War II, when the Department of Defense used it as an important lookout point. And in 1961, it was sold to the state of New Hampshire, now owned by the Department of Parks and Recreation. So we started working on this in 2009 as part of a big management committee, and we created, in partnership with everyone, we created this big management plan to try to tackle this habitat restoration. And in 2014, we added a few additions to that plan. But a variety of partners on this management committee, the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, Parks and Recs, DES, the State Conservation Committee, the Department of Agriculture, Markets and Foods, the Seacoast Science Center, Fish and Game. So a lot of partners. And here's why, here's what we're working on. So it's important because of all these really, really threatened or rare, uncommon habitats we want to protect, but it's heavily disturbed and it had been unmanaged for years. So this caused a lot of invasive plants. So that's what we're tackling here is Japanese barberry and knotweed and a whole host of invasive plants. So we started working from south to north using integrated pest management techniques to try to reduce some of that seed pressure from those invasive plants. And here's just a quick summary of what integrated pest management looks like. There's 4 different main categories. We mostly focus on mechanical and chemical, but there's a couple. There's some mechanical is any kind of cutting or brush mowing. Cultural is that fire over there. So, a burning to control the species. We actually haven't done that at Orion. Biological, and then chemical. So that's herbicide. And then we've done a lot of planting. So to get those native plants back. Shagbark hickory, a handful of nuts right there, and a lot of volunteers. We'll talk about that in a minute, but we've used a lot of volunteers to try to, plant the native plants. So not just trying to mitigate the invasive plants, but also trying to bring back those natural plants. So over 10 years, we've gathered over $160,000 of match from volunteers. So the state, the SCA, AmeriCorps volunteers, a variety of private partnerships. So different companies who want to send their employees for a day to get outside and do some community work. So this has been a really important way to get a lot of conservation on the ground. We are currently at about 130 acres under restoration, and over 4,005. Oh, I'm getting my numbers wrong. $450,000 in grant funding. So a lot of different grants have gone into making this happen. Here's just a quick overview. This is what it looks like when we sort of think about this restoration. We have different parcels, different pieces of the land that have been divided up based on those communities and based on the types of invasives that you're trying to tackle. So this is the way we're looking at it when we're looking at this park. So our next phase of restoration is coastal shoreline restoration. And here's another, I think I've mentioned most of these partners before, but here's a visual of all the partners. And that's it. Hopefully I got it all in 5 minutes.
10 years in 5 minutes? That's amazing.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, it is.
We certainly, and like I said, we haven't done it alone. It's been we've had a lot of help.
I tell you, when we first moved here, Odeon was one of the first places we went, and I was impressed by the bittersweet. And I thought, oh my God, I haven't been in and out of Odeon in a long time, except over by the parks and the building. So I'm just gonna have to go see what you've been doing. It'll be wonderful.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, Vicki, this is Paul Wainwright in Atkinson. You may have heard we have a similar project, smaller in scope, that a couple of your people have been helping with us on consulting at the moment.
Yeah, that's great. We love to work with towns on invasive projects and try to see not just invasives on the coast, but invasives everywhere to try to manage them. So we're happy to help with that.
We feel sometimes like we're the world center for bittersweet.
Mm.
Yeah, once it takes hold, it does feel that way for sure.
It does, yeah. And our problem is we've known about this for 10 years and have pretty much ignored it, and it's made it a lot worse.
I think we can all do something through our own town's newsletters or whatever our social media or our interaction could be to let people know it's iconic autumn in New England, but it's also iconically the biggest thug. So we should try and encourage people, don't do little craft projects with bittersweet, even if you've safely removed the seeds. And I would like to see us have commercial sales of plastic bittersweet. Is actually pretty darn bad stuff too, but you know, it's on sale right now at lots of craft stores, and having people still value it and worship it and stick it on a door jamb in a plastic form is something I would like to wave a magic wand at.
That would be great.
Yeah, for publicity, some of you know we have a pretty effective Facebook group here at Atkinson. So if you'd like to tune in on what we're doing, just go to Facebook and look for Atkinson Conservation. I think we even have some people from Atkinson, Georgia who've joined.
Yeah.
Oh. If you have other ideas or questions, please feel free to get in touch with Vicki at the RCCD office. And it's something that we're all very excited about. And Margie, we'll see you out there walking.
If you have any questions while somebody is talking tonight, you can go to the chat room and ask the question, and we'll kick that off to the speaker at that time. So we can do that in a timely manner.
Vicki, it would be nice to have a field trip out there to see what you've done.
Yeah, that would be great. That'd be a good idea.
It would be an eye-opener for people who think bittersweet is beautiful.
Mm.
It would. It would be an education.
I'm not sure the status of the Invasives Academy this year. Maybe Chris knows more about that, but we've done a couple of bigger tours at Odeon, and maybe Chris knows more about that.
They are starting soon. It's going to be a Zoom format, and I'm not sure what their in-person experience is going to be like, but I wrote that down. Field trip with Vicki leading the way. Vicki and Tracy can, Vicki, Tracy, and small company can take us out maybe on a walk. I like the idea of going out there and seeing it up close and personal. That could be interesting. And I know we all are still operating under COVID considerations, and I think that people understand if we were to say, here's a sign up and it's going to be a limit of 10 people, because anybody leading a group, you're that far apart from each other, you soon get to quite a large circle, and talking loudly or singing at Odeon Point are things that we shouldn't be doing. So I don't think people would be offended if we said it's kind of a first come, first serve sort of a thing. So we'll keep that on deck. Thank you for mentioning that tour idea.
Mm-hmm.
I did the 2-day Invasives Academy last year, and it was life-changing, both in good ways and bad ways. The bad way was I can't go anywhere anymore without seeing invasive plants.
Yeah, I agree. I did the first one when they had it at Odeon Point, actually, and just the people that were in that group were so fascinating. The whole thing was just outstanding. Yeah, I agree, Paul. Yeah, I even see it like at many miles an hour on a big road, and through Connecticut, the whole thing is taken up. Every road in Connecticut is taken up with all these things. I can now identify at quick speeds on big roads.
Yep. Same here.
Okay, we need to move on.
All righty. I am happy to have Evie and Margie Bean here representing Pollinator Pathways for us. And I will say that they've been impacted many ways by COVID-19 and haven't let it get them down. At the time that the COVID struck, there were 4 other towns, 4 other conservation commissions that they were interacting with to see about their support from other towns to join in. At this time, they have support and interest from Atkinson, Chester, East Kingston, Epping, Exeter, Fremont, Kensington, Kingston, Newmarket, Newton, Raymond, and Rye.
And
So, pardon?
Hampton. Did you mention Hampton?
I didn't mention Hampton because the last I heard they were one of the on decks for when that was being solidified when COVID hit. So
All
be
right.
very proud of adding Hampton to that list.
Okay.
So Evie and Nathan, I'm sorry. Yeah, Nathan is having trouble logging in, Vicki. Can you let Nathan in, please? We do have Evie and Margie here, so I'll let them tell you about Pollinator Pathways and their experiences, and then looking forward, what can we do with this group? Thank you both for being here under these conditions too.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us, yes. I'm going to start out. I moved to Kingston in 1975. It was a small little farming town, lots of open green space. By the end of the 1980s, it was obvious that what Rockingham County grew best was houses. We were losing our green space. In 2000, the farms and the great deal of open space were just gone. They just disappeared, and the town's population had grown by 4,000 people. Pollinator habitat loss in our area in the county is due a good part to this housing growth. New Hampshire is really squeezed by the houses and the businesses and the habitat loss. It's very evident in southern New Hampshire. So in the summer of 2018, I was talking with a neighbor. She was very excited about her first butterfly garden. She is a young person and she was so excited. And I had been reading an article about pollinator pathways, and between her conversation and what I had read, it just kind of popped together that we could be the first 2 steps in a pollinator pathway. At the time, I didn't know much about pollinators. That changed. I brought the idea to Evie Nathan, chair of Kingston Conservation, and I explained to her that I'd like to start a pollinator program. It would be a do-it-yourself program. I have no plans of planting plants for other people. I have enough problems planting my own. But she thought it was a good idea, and we went ahead with it. I began to envision a Kingston do-it-yourself project with pollinator-friendly gardens like stepping stones throughout the town. Each garden would be like a stone in the pathway. We could replace lost pollinator habitat, 1 garden, 1 yard at a time. My first idea was to do a blog, but I'm not very good on a computer, so that ended fast, and it ended up a monthly letter, and I still do that. By now, it was the end of summer, and the September voting was approaching us. Kingston Conservation has historically always set up a table outside of voting, so it was a natural for us to get permission and do it again. We put out information about both conservation and pollinators. Lots of photographs, beautiful flowers, pollinators, various habitats. And we put out lots of handouts that would go home with folks so that they could keep the information with them. And we also had a sign-up list. Evie had thought of using a large town map, asking people to put a sticker where their house was on the map. People love to be acknowledged. They like to get credit for what they're doing, and they loved it. It was the start of a mailing list for the monthly letter, but also was a start because visually a map of Kingston is sort of a rectangle. And Brentwood's at the north end, Plastow's at the south end, and people were putting in these markers and they could see this pathway evolving from north to south. We've used that map at many events and people still love it. Our goal was to make a pathway so pollinators following garden to garden would get the habitat that they need to survive. At this point, we were just thinking of Kingston and what Kingstonians could do. In April 2019, Vicki Brown, a UNH Natural Resources Steward, Covert's cooperator, and East Kingston Conservation Commission member, gave a fabulous talk at the Kingston Library called A Garden for Pollinators and Wildlife. It was inspiring, successful, well-received, and Vicki agreed to join forces with us. She'd bring her professional marketing skills to bear. She was a huge help. In the summer of 2019, we developed Pollinator Conversations. The conversations are not big events, they're not big programs, they're really just a more relaxed family activity. The 2019 ones were a walk at my farm, Three Maples Farm in Kingston, and also a walk around the Kingston Library Gardens, which are absolutely gorgeous, and most people in town don't even know they're there. Fall was busy. Both East Kingston and Kingston had a successful seed swap. About 40 people came to each event, bringing seeds and questions, and some people brought bulbs. I ended up with garlic from that meeting. Leslie Randlett and Elizabeth Mello were volunteers at the seed swaps and soon became volunteer corps members. Also, pollinator-friendly fall cleanup was offered at our library. The same meeting, we had a honey tasting. It was a really great meeting. At this time, Rye also had a fall garden cleanup presentation with a good showing of people. Interestingly, most of the people in the room weren't from Rye. They're from all over the seacoast. In June, Vicki organized a milkweed plant event at East Kingston. Following all the COVID protocols was hard to organize, but she made it a great success. With her background in marketing and PR, we were soon exploring the idea of reaching out to all of Rockingham County. Sharing with other towns what Kingston is doing is exciting. It's still a do-it-yourself project. It's not something where we come in and tell you what to do or do it for you. We can offer ideas that have worked for us. We can share things that we've learned, share resources that we've acquired. It's a very exciting project. At the end of this, I would like to quote from Xerces Society. I love Xerces and I steal from them all the time. Insect conservation is not something that happens only in distant wildernesses or dedicated natural reserves. These animals populate our backyards and our local parks, roadsides and creeks. In a time of growing environmental threats, what we do in our hometowns and neighborhoods is increasingly important. And that's where I'm at. I believe that fully. So it's Evie's turn.
Thank you, Margie. Margie got the easy part. She got to enumerate all the wonderful events we did. They were so much fun. We've started doing, even with COVID, we've started doing some events again. We've had 2 wildflower walks, social distancing with masks, one in Fremont, one in Kingston, and I tonight had a request for another one. The wildflowers may not be pollinators, but they're necessary for our pollinators. One of our primary messages is that we've over many years of delightful gardening, we've lost a lot of our native plants and flowers, and we've opted for all sorts of exotics and cultivars, but we want to bring back native landscapes. That's one of the important things that this project aims at. And as part of going forward, I think we'd like to really work with local landscapers, condo associations, to try to get their landscapers to change their whole aesthetic. We'd like to work with local nurseries and try to improve the native plant stock. And it seems to be already, the word is already spreading. Everywhere I turn, my computer just died and I went up and brought the computer to my computer repair person, and he took me out into the backyard and showed me all of his native plants. So it's everywhere. I just wanted to give you one quote that is really important to me, and it's been a guiding light for me since I started doing conservation work after retiring from my regular job. Is think globally, but act locally. And that's what Pollinator Pathways is all about. We really had started out thinking we were just going to do this in Kingston. It was really Vicki Brown, I have to give her the credit, who began to envision that this could go outside of Kingston, probably because she was from East Kingston, but it began to spread and spread and spread. We've had all kinds of inquiries from out of state. There's a little group that started up in Cumberland, Maine. That's a little subgroup. They call themselves Pollinator Pathways Maine. So it's been really exciting to see this grow in spite of COVID. So far, everything we've done, I love your budget, Vicki, because our budget so far has been $250. So that is that. We got a grant from New England Grassroots Environmental Fund for $250 2 years ago. And so far, that's the only money we've had incoming. We've begged, steel, and borrowed and a lot of elbow grease to get this going. I have one little anecdote that I love, and this happened even before Margie came up with this idea. Some years ago, I brought my granddaughter to the Kingston Recreational Summer Camp. There was a little milkweed grove that grew there. And I loved going over there to look at it and was hoping for monarchs. But right on the button, as soon as it got high enough for monarchs to think about it, the highway department came and mowed it down. I complained to the highway department. I put signs up. I even put a little rickety fence up there. They mowed it down again, and the following year they mowed it down again. So I began to wonder what we could do to save this little monarch oasis. And so we begged a bunch of leftover plants from a couple of plant sales. We got the kids at the rec to plant them, and we planted a pollinator garden around the milkweed, so that now there's a garden, an established garden there. And I've got some pictures. Can I do a screen share now, Vicki?
Go ahead and bring your cursor down to the bottom.
Yep, I got that.
And there'll be a green button that says screen share.
Okay, here's one. And do I drag the picture over there, or how does
Go
that?
ahead and click on the picture. Do you see the picture you want to show?
I do.
Go ahead and click on it.
I did. And I hit share. You know what? It says open system preferences. I think I'm going to have to pass on those. We'll have to do it another time. Anyway, bottom line, thank you. Bottom line is we put a pollinator or a monarch milkweed garden sign there, and the highway department finally stopped mowing it. The day that I first saw 2 monarchs cavorting in that monarch garden, in that milkweed garden, was one of the highlights of my conservation career. It was thrilling. Planted and they will come. So that's a good example of 1 yard at a time. And our mission statement, if I can find it in all my papers here, let's see. Our mission statement is connecting sustained pollinator habitat 1 yard at a time through community partnerships, education, and engagement. And that's basically what we're about. Atkinson is now partnering with their garden center with, let's see, I've got the name of it here.
Freshwater Farms on Route 111.
Freshwater Farms. So they're going to sponsor a seed exchange event for you, which is fabulous.
They are. Yeah, we've got Girl Scouts and everybody out looking for milkweed seeds this fall.
Oh, that's fabulous.
They're going to overwinter them in a cold place, like everybody tells us to do.
Yeah.
So they'll germinate next spring.
Yeah.
And they're going to be given away at Freshwater Farms. We're going to have some other places like the library where people can pick up seeds and that sort of thing. So it's it's not anything I personally am doing. It's just one of the people on the commission, Susie Newman,
Right.
a real dynamo and is organizing this whole thing.
Yeah. I know, that's great. Our seed exchanges were probably our most popular events. People just flocked to them, and we had lines out the door. And the problem with arranging seed events with COVID is that we've got to find a place big enough and be able to social distance and do this event in a very different way.
Mm.
So
I'm working on it. We'll see if we can come through with it.
Have you ever tried seed bombs?
yes.
Those are really good to get kids involved. They sit in the back of the car and their mother drives them around town and they just chuck the
Yeah.
bombs out the window as they drive along.
Every year in Kingston, we have a Kingston Days, a big Kingston Days event, which is like a huge fair. And we had a small table there with native plants that we were giving away, basically just to pull people in. Lots of information we were giving out, and we had seed bombs there for the kids to make, and that was delightful. I had to find a place. I had to look around for clay soil, and I ended up having to take my kayak way the heck out somewhere to get some clay. But that was a fun project. We've had more fun with this. It's really been super. So, Chris, did you have any questions for us specifically? Whoop, can't hear you.
I think your story is really heartwarming, and I think that people who hear it can identify on some level and then be inspired at the level you folks are. I would like to ask Margie if your Pollinator Pathway newsletter is available by subscription to anyone. Can you tell us how to sign up for it? I receive it, and I got to tell you, I love the writing style, and I love the way it's a mixture of personal humanistic stories and then some scientific information and some other resources that you share in that newsletter.
I tried very hard to mix it. Thank you for that compliment. It's really not a subscription. It's give us your email and we'll send it to you.
Right. How many people, Margie, have you got? You've got a lot of people that it goes to.
100 and some odd, yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's fabulous. It really is. And whenever somebody says, I don't get your letter, I say, give me your email quick, But it's at events, which of course this has slowed that down. So yeah, I think maybe we have a secret weapon in Kingston. It's the Carriagetown News. It's a local newspaper that is probably on its last legs. I hope not. And among other things, the mother of the girl I spoke to about the pollinator garden is the editor of this paper. So she's just there for us. We give her articles and she pops them right onto the front page if she's able to.
I was going to say, if I can interrupt you, Margie, that this started out, it started out with Margie and me, added Vicki, then we added 2 volunteers, Elizabeth and Leslie, who are still with us, and they're now core members because they do much more than a volunteer would do. And then now it's become a subcommittee, an official subcommittee of the Conservation Commission in Kingston. We voted it as such. We voted that we can use public education line item money because we don't have any other money. So that's been great. And now we're actually putting out feelers for more committee members. So we're actually beginning to make this a committee. Basically, with 13 partners, it's too much for 3 or 4 people to do, to keep in touch with people. It's been difficult if you work part-time, if you're not always available. It's been difficult keeping up with all of our partners and staying in touch. A logistical issue, I guess. So I think if we have more active members and people who are gardeners, who are into conservation, into open space, into citizen science, I think we really benefit by having extra members. So we're putting out feelers for that right now. I think the ad is going in Carriagetown News this week.
Yeah, it should be in there.
Awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough for this presentation and for the way your warmth and enthusiasm travels through Zoom to this audience. And I'm sure the recording will be valuable for people to watch as well.
Next time we'll try to have the pictures ready to go, because we've got some great and fun pictures.
And thank you for asking us to be here.
Yes,
Oh,
thank you
you're very
both.
welcome.
Thank you, Richard, too.
Yes.
And the plug you need is the workshop for the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions annual meeting via Zoom. Pollinator Pathways presentation from Margie and Evie will be one of the workshops on Saturday, November 7th. So you'll get more information about that, but this is the type of program we're looking to help spread the word through all the conservation commissions in the state. So take a vitamin, take a nap, and hang on to your hat when you give that presentation, because I'm sure it's going to be quite a contagious, in a positive way, contagious event and a great workshop. Thanks for doing that.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you for your support.
Barbara has put a whole bunch of links in the chat room that you can go to for good sources of plans and plants and more information about pollinator pathways. And Vicki has a comment in there about conservation districts so you can contact the conservation district to get more information also. And if anybody wants to help and find out how it's really done in the conservation district, you can sign up for one of our projects. Although this year, I think our volunteering is pretty minimal, non-existent.
Yeah, we've chosen not to host volunteer events at the time.
Okay.
So yeah, very minimal this year.
Hopefully next spring that we'll be able to roll again, but we'll have to see what happens. All right, moving on. We have with us Kelly Boland from the Natural Resource Conservation Service, located in Dover, New Hampshire. She's the state wildlife biologist or the state biologist, one of those.
State biologist, but I'm a wildlife biologist.
Originally from the Midwest, but has been here a while and went to UNH for her master's degree. And she's going to talk about early successional habitat maintenance and establishment, which goes right along with pollinator pathways. So I'll turn it over to you and we'll see what happens.
Sure, yeah, and I'm open to this being a conversation.
Okay.
I love hearing about all of what you guys are doing and how much passion you have for pollinators. And while you were talking, I brought up a fairly new initiative where we have with the NRCS called the New England Pollinator Partnership. And it hasn't been advertised really widely yet, but I can share. Can I share my screen and show folks the? Okay, I'm gonna give it a shot here. Okay, here it is. There. All right. So this is the flyer that was created. It's a partnership between Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the NRCS. And it's really looking to do some habitat work to improve habitat for a variety of pollinators, but one of them is, a couple of them are up for federal review for listing, and one of them is the monarch butterfly, which is really pertinent to what you guys were talking about. So it's definitely imperiled right now, and so we're really trying to get habitat out there on the ground with private landowners. Our agency typically works with private landowners to help them create habitats, just like you were talking about, you know, or manage fields or manage other types of early successional habitats. So these are the three species that are either listed or up for listing. This yellow-banded bumblebee in this picture here is more found in the White Mountains, but it's one of the species that we're targeting to try to help with creating pollinator habitats. So I can send this link around, but generally we're trying to create more of this type of habitat, which is maybe looks a little bit like the plantings you were doing around the monarchs.
Yep.
You know, with a variety of species, and maybe use plugs or potted plants, I don't know, or planted milkweed maybe. But we use some seed mixes and can make, it's called conservation cover. We can do other types of early successional habitat, which is, mowing regimes for fields, which is a little less intensive than planting. And then we're also looking to work with folks who, do pest management, because a lot of the crops require the pest management, but how do you do it in a sustainable way that isn't going to harm species that might be using those crops at certain times? So changing a little bit about how you go out and, when you spray or if you spray at all. So that's just a little bit about the New England Pollinator Partnership. New Hampshire has signed up to do it for 25 years, this agreement, to do over 1,000 acres of habitat for pollinators. So hopefully we can make some headway there. So I'm gonna, yep, go ahead. Sorry.
You do this with private landowners. So how does a private landowner sign up to do pollinator habitat or early successional habitat improvement?
Well, they would contact our field offices, and they're in all the different counties. So they would contact, somebody in Epping for, Rockingham and Stratford counties, or somebody in Concord for the Merrimack and Hillsborough counties. So they would, go directly to those folks. And we've been working with pollinators for quite a while. So I think we have some good strategies down on how to make this habitat. So I'd say send them to the field offices there and see if they can help or have somebody out. We now have actually partnered and hired somebody, and it's a shared position with the Xerces Society, which I heard somebody mention before, and she is an expert, and she's been going out to a lot of people's private lands and giving advice on pollinators. But the first step is to contact the field office first for NRCS. All right, so I'm going to share a different screen now. Let's see, which screen is this? All right. Let me know if you can see what I see. All right, you can see it? Okay. So I was asked to talk a little bit about early successional habitat, and I don't know how much you all are familiar with it, but it's pretty much the early stage of a habitat, early successional. And, we've been promoting this habitat for quite a while, and it's to the point, I think a lot of people have caught on to doing some level of early successional management. That could include pollinator habitat, it could be for birds, all sorts of critters. But you look at early successional habitat and there's a lot of micro habitats within it. The forb species will provide a lot of food for pollinators. The bare ground, also really important for pollinators for nesting. A lot of the solitary bees nest underground. Yes, yellow jackets also do, but they're not bees. We have to love all of our creatures, but anyway.
Some more than others.
Yeah, some more than others, especially if you're allergic like me. And then, you get your different layers, and different critters are going to use each of these layers within an early successional habitat. The thing is, this is temporary habitat. It's going to grow out of this stage. And eventually go from, your bare ground all the way to your young woodland. If you're talking to a forester and you say early successional habitat, they're not going to think about this end. They're going to think a young woodland is early successional habitat. So it's kind of using that word has been transitioned to more like young forest in this case, or old field. I use the word old field to describe the perennial growth forb stage. So some of it's learning the best language for the person you're talking to. And all of our favorite and sometimes not favorite critters use this habitat. I'm a big fan of the herps, the turtles, and these two guys. But a lot of people really like to focus on the birds because they're visible. And yeah, Evelyn's Bird
Yes.
fan?
Or bird.
Okay, can you name these? Are you a birder?
Yeah, well, I've got a woodcock. I'm not sure of the, maybe, I'm not sure of the warbler. I've got
Prairie warbler?
prairie warbler, maybe a field or chipping sparrow, an eastern towhee,
Yep.
a wood thrush? No,
Brown thrasher?
brown thrasher, way off, and a whippoorwill.
Yep.
Well,
And then anybody got the turtles?
Got a blandings in there somewhere.
The one I didn't include was blandings, but we do have blandings.
We got a spotted in the middle.
middle.
Yep. That's a spotted turtle.
I can't see enough of the bottom one. A wood turtle?
That's right, wood turtle.
And then the orange throat.
Orange throat. Okay.
So,
Black racer,
you know, and then
water snake,
yep.
right? Yep.
Black racer and a hognose snake.
Oh.
So, and this is one of our bees. I'm not sure which one, but the commonality they all have is that they all use early successional habitat, but they all use slightly different components of that habitat, and need different things based on the space, the area, the temperature for the herps down in the corner, the turtles and snakes. The temperature regulation is really important. So where those habitats are located and how much shade they provide or sun at what time of year is really important. And, you know, as we look at the species, the birds, obviously a lot of these are either ground nesters or shrub nesters. The New England cottontail, actually that looks more like an eastern to me, but we'll call it a New England cottontail. I think you do have eastern cottontails quite a bit down in parts of Rockingham County. And they need large pieces of habitat, 25 acres. Towhees, like, you know, at least 2 acres, usually bigger. 10 acres is great if you can get that.
We love successional habitat.
Yeah, so they like the shrubby, really thicket. You'll hear something, you think there's a critter in the thicket, and you know, it might be a towhee, but they're pretty loud. I used to live on Cape Cod, and I would hear them outside my house all the time. Same with whippoorwills, who like it a lot drier and more open.
And the birds go into the leaves, and you think there's an elephant in the bushes.
That's right.
And everything back and forth looking for bugs. They're really funny. They're noisy.
Yeah, they're very entertaining, and thrashers as well. You don't see as many thrashers, but on the coast, they're probably at Odiorn, I would guess. Maybe not. I'm sure somebody's done a bird study there. So these are just some of the critters, and I probably don't need to tell you, they've all declined over the past, 50, 60 years for a variety of reasons. So yeah, we're talking about less than 15 foot tall shrublands. Sometimes they're created by forest patch cuts, or sometimes they're created just through mowing, interspersed with grasses, ferns, and wildflowers. There you go, there's your monarch. They're also using an early stage of early successional habitat. This is a site in Rollinsford, I believe, and the landowners were interested in what they could do or how they could change how they mow their field, or if they could plant anything to help monarchs. And we were able to give them some recommendations. Like you were saying, you were upset because you saw a bunch of milkweed being mowed at the wrong time of year. And so simple things, just like giving a time restriction to a landowner could, save allow these guys to become adults and then, fly south for the winter. And generally we can say, if you mow after even October or Halloween, it's a good date to give people. It's a simple thing to do for a landowner if they have a field that they have and they want to keep open and they do want to mow. If you mow it late, the milkweed will come back the next year. There's some studies that actually show that if you mow it early, the milkweed is a little more palatable, and monarchs might choose it to lay their eggs on and have young. But this is an older milkweed. It's probably been around for, it's looks a little leathery. It's probably not as tasty as the young milkweeds are. All right, so as you guys were talking, I throw this slide in because, you know, we were talking about pollinators. This is something that we do with landowners, especially in this case, blueberry farmer. We prepare the site. This is a little bigger, you know, it's maybe an acre we're working with here, or half an acre. And we help this landowner prepare a seed bed. And it's really important when you do some seeding to get rid of all the competition if you can. And you can do it through either herbicide methods or solarizing or using black plastic, which some of you may be familiar with these techniques. But a real important thing to do before seeding down a big mix is to get control of those weeds. So then you have a nice mix of flowers over here, and then that will keep bees in the area, so then they can go and, you know, pollinate these blueberries.
We have,
So,
can I
yep.
put in something?
Absolutely.
We have a farmer in town right around the corner from me, actually, and he's he's got the black plastic on, and he's going to do a real pollinator meadow in an area of his farm. But what really impressed me, I talked with him this weekend, is they train and teach and work with young farmers on different parts of their farm. And he's going to require all of the people they work with to learn beekeeping.
No kidding.
Yeah, which I think is awesome, or at least learn how to do it, even if they don't do it themselves. So
yeah,
they're all going to have to go through a beekeeping course to be a farmer there, which I think is really neat. Take care of their pollinators.
Yeah, and it's a good learning. Like you'll make mistakes when you beekeep. Obviously, your first year or two. I started a couple years ago, and but you really get in tune with what is flowering at what time of year. You know, you really get in tune with what you when you drive around, you say, what is out right now that the bees can forage on. So you start noticing that seasonality and all, you know, in flowers, and what's early is really important. You know, early season flowers, there's not as many of those around. Things like willow, it's really good to plant willows around. I like the shrub plants because they provide so many flowers per shrub, and things like elderberry can be fantastic. So anyway, so yeah, that's great. They'll learn a lot through beekeeping, and then maybe get some honey out of it. So, sorry, I don't know what time it is. I don't want to run long. It's almost 8. So the overall message with early successional habitat is it requires disturbance. And, you know, this is an old field, maybe milkweeds in this, you know, I would say they're mowing this too early right now. I would prefer to see them mow this after November, or even, you know, every 3 years. And they're using a, you know, brush hog. This type of habitat, maybe your towhee habitat.
Yeah.
Yep, there you go. You know, you need to manage this a little more aggressively if you want to maintain this. And obviously, again, mow outside the nesting season. This is, it's not going to be pretty when you first manage it. You're using a piece of equipment like this, maybe. There's a Brontosaurus. And this is the machine we use, and it costs money. So, you know, we can do this Bronto work for maybe $1,000 an acre, you know, $800 an acre, depending on how you start. It's not cheap, but there is funding for it through our programs if you're in a priority area, especially for these shrubland species. And then sometimes you're doing gap openings in the forest, which can help different types of birds. And this is, of course, going to require a higher level machine forest management plan, but really important for these birds that are using canopy gaps, maybe, like the chestnut-sided warbler. And then just my last plug, and I know it's almost 7, so I'm a big fan of the turtles. The turtles use early successional habitat, especially the wood turtle right here, using alder swamps. Mow late for them. Mow very late, mow after November. They're gonna be using these edges of the fields, especially wood turtles. Mow outside, you know, even not before April 15th. They use these bare ground habitats, maybe a little early successional habitat for nesting. So they nest in late May through early July. Mostly June is their big nesting period. So having those sandy areas, you know, maintain them as open, but always think about the timing when you're opening up these habitats.
They have a long gestation. They're like 8 weeks or something before the.
Yeah. So it's long, and then the hatchlet. So they bury the eggs. They're under 4 inches of soil. It could be sandy or, you know, poor soils that aren't going to be rich with grasses. Otherwise, that wouldn't allow, you know, sunlight to hit, and well drained too. They don't want the eggs to get saturated. And then those hatchlings can leave and get into the, you know, the wetlands by sometime in October. Some might hatch as early as August. Some might not hatch till sometime in October. So it's a lot about the timing. And so, you know, you could see the nesting area. There's a blandings type of habitat. Nesting area right near a wetland. Staging area is where the females might hang out before they nest. It's like a little wetland right here. So another type of early successional habitat that's great for bees too. So I'll end it there because I know we ran out of time, but big topic to cover. And yeah.
Kelly, if I could add just a funny story. You were talking about beekeeping and different kinds of plants that the bees like. My town moderator took me aside last year at the day of deliberative session, and he said, you know, Paul, my bees produce the very sweetest honey when the Japanese knotweed is in bloom.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a blessing and it's a curse and a blessing. It's just if you got an infestation that's so bad it's unsurmountable, you can feel good that pollinators do love some of these invasive plants. Doesn't mean we shouldn't stop trying to, you know, tackle them when it's possible, but that's kind of what I say when I see those seas of Japanese knotweed. It's like, well, the bees are eating them anyway.
Aren't the young sprouts edible? I'm surprised we haven't seen seen the plants show up in the market for people to eat. If we start harvesting, we might be able to control it better.
Yeah, if they're under, I think if they're under 6 inches or a foot, they taste like rhubarb. If you get them early, and you can treat them like rhubarb. So I've tried it, you know, you kind of just melt it. But I think if you know what you're doing, you could do something with that.
Well, thank you very much, Kelly.
Sure.
Our next, this was really great. Thank you, Evie, Margie, Kelly, and Vicki. Great presentations tonight. Be sure to tell all your friends that are in conservation commissions, and our next meeting is going to be October 19th because the 12th falls on a federal holiday and we wouldn't be able to get speakers for that day. Our speakers next time are from Buffers by the Bay, on the Bay, and Damien Mia from NRCS is going to talk. They're going to talk about buffer protections, how to protect buffer lands, and so that pretty much wraps it up for our inaugural event. And we hit about 5 districts, 5 commissions tonight, and hopefully we can expand it next time. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you on the 19th. Thank you, Chris.
Oh yeah, thank you everyone. It's wonderful to see this energy.
Thank you, Chris and Richard.
Thank you for doing it.
Mhm.
Getting us all together.
Thank you very much.
Okay, see you next month.
Okay.
Come back October 19th. That's the best thank you to Vicki Nelson for hosting us. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki.